Welcome back. On today's episode, we are looking at the latest report card released evaluating Kentucky's infrastructure. And joining me to discuss the findings is Tom Rockaway, who says one of the takeaways for this whole report card is to help raise awareness of infrastructure. And Tom, we again thank you for your time today. And talk about that awareness aspect. The average person may not be aware that there are people that are taking a look at infrastructure, evaluating where the state is, and may not be on the front lines or in the weeds knowing the details of where we are as a state, but talk about the importance of raising the awareness on the topic of infrastructure.
Certainly. Infrastructure affects our day-to-day lives. It directly affects our quality of life and the economic vitality of our state. And it touches each of us equally, and we've got to maintain and invest in it, or we're going to start to lose some of the gains that we've made in our state. And one of the purposes of this report card is to try and help raise public awareness of infrastructure and how much of a role it does play in our day-to-day lives.
And share with me, you obviously have served as the chair of this committee, but after their findings started coming in, and you as a chair saw information about Kentucky, but then other committee members, what was some of the initial reactions of reading the report and seeing that we are at a C- level as a state?
Well, I think it should certainly say that we need to be aware of what happens with our infrastructure. We need to make infrastructure a priority, and we have to invest in it. Otherwise, it's going to start to affect us directly in a lot of different ways.
You're sharing with me that there are over 3,000 bridges in Kentucky. People may not be aware about that, but with this particular report card, how do our roads and bridges, where are we when it comes to infrastructure?
Our roads and bridges need our significant attention. We've made some advances with the SHIFT initiative to try and prioritize investment in our roads and bridges, but there's still a long way to go.
We also, water and wastewater was a big point of in the particular report card, something that we people may take for granted, water and the access to H2O, but what were the findings in the report card?
Early in 2000, we made, as a state, we made a significant investment in water and wastewater, and as a result, we now provide drinking water to over 97% of the state, which is great for Kentucky. However, we have 435 independent water utilities out there, and some of these smaller utilities are having difficulty meeting the new demands and increased regulations that are being imposed upon them. And if you get behind the maintenance or the regulation process, it's very, very difficult to catch back up.
Well, let's talk about some of the next steps. The report recently released. Kentucky, according to the report, there's a lot of areas that needs to be addressed. But what's your perspective as a chair of this committee? Where do we go from here now that the report is out?
A lot of our infrastructure needs to be improved, and my question to you would be, which one do you want to start to eliminate or not think about? Which one can you let go? I mean, infrastructure addresses us every day, and a lot of times we don't think about the infrastructure that we don't see. Sometimes we forget about the importance of water, power, and wastewater just because we don't see it, but it does play an immediate role for our day-to-day activities. Roads and bridges sometimes get more attention just because we see them and they're easy to identify and see the problems, but really all of our infrastructure works as a combined system, and you can't ignore any significant part of it.
And talk about the actual announcement that you all had. There was a press conference where these reports were shared to the public, but legislators, other people who are invested in this particular topic. Talk about that day and kind of what feedback you were hearing from people once the report card was released.
Sure, we released a report card, and we had the press release, and we also had several keynote speakers that represented state representatives, infrastructure owners, and other infrastructure users. The message is the same. Infrastructure impacts us all. We have to make sure that we maintain it and plan for the future. If we don't, it's going to affect our quality of life, and it's going to be more and more difficult for Kentucky to compete in a growing market.
And your work with the committee, will there be additional meetings to discuss this, or where do you all go as a committee after this?
As a committee, right now we're focusing on getting the message out and helping to raise public awareness. As a community, we have to decide that Kentucky infrastructure is important. And I know there are some very, very tough budget decisions that have to be made, but we have to make sure that we continue to invest in infrastructure.
And where can people go to find more information about the full report and read it for themselves?
Sure, it's on the ASC Infrastructure website. And if you do a search for ASC Infrastructure Kentucky report card, it'll come up.
Well, Tom, we appreciate you joining us today and talking us through the report card, and looking forward to seeing the next steps in this entire process of grading Kentucky's infrastructure.
Very good, thank you.
You bet. Now, stay with us on In Focus Kentucky. Coming up next, Kentucky House Republican Caucus Chair Suzanne Miles joins us to share how legislators in Frankfort are working to address infrastructure projects across the Commonwealth during the 2019 legislative session.
The main problem is safety. That's one of the main things that we've addressed going forward with the bridges. The bridges across the state, as far as the governor has mentioned, and we are very well aware we've got a lot of bridges that need to be replaced.
We'll explain more right after your Weather on the Ones following this break.